Lovely. Okay. So, the 5 things you need to know about Word before you start your thesis. Let's get cracking on those 5 things, shall we? Some of them I have talked about before, some in great length, and some of them will be fairly new as well. Okay. So the number one thing that you need to know about in Word is styles. Yes, did you guess I was going to say that? So I do bang on about styles in Word a great deal. That's because they are really the backbone to any long document. So styles are really great. So styles are these things here that you can see along the top of my screen here. And the styles control things such as the formatting of your document. Sorry, I'm just going to turn my video off so you don't see me gawping. There we go. So the styles, they control the formatting, so they'll control how the text looks and also how the paragraph looks and how it behaves. So for example, what does the next text look like once you've hit enter? Is the next paragraph going to be in the same style, and things like that? And is it centered, or is it sitting in a box, or is it in italics? All those sorts of things are controlled by styles. So it's a way to quickly and easily format with one click. But more importantly, it can do all sorts of other things, particularly the heading styles. So we'll see here, I've got this where it's saying sun here, and that's actually in heading 1. If I click on it, you can see heading 1 is therefore highlighted. So applying the styles is really easy. You just highlight your text, and then you can click on the button, and it will do that for you. So it's really easy to use them. And I have done a whole webinar just on styles, so I don't want to bore you too much, but just for anyone who is unconvinced about the use of styles, let me show you quickly some things you can do with them. So first of all, I can come into here and I can go to my references and I can say, I want a table of contents. So you'll see here I've got sun, I've got inner planets. Then when I get somewhere like Mercury, I'll just go back to the home, you'll see that's heading style 2. And I think I've got some moons somewhere as well. Here we go, I've got some moons in there, heading style 3. Okay, so if I go back up to the top of my document and I come in here and I say references, table of contents, put in this automatic table number 1, there you go, I've now just automatically done a table of contents. Okay, and it's got my page numbers there, it's got all of my levels as well. So that's one of the main reasons you would be wanting to use styles rather than just formatting by hand. But also what we want to do, let me just move that out of the way, it's getting in my way, is other things that I can do. If I go to my view menu here, I've got my navigation pane. So this is a fairly short document. You see here it's only 4 pages long, but imagine you had a longer document. So if I want to navigate around, I can just use these little buttons here to navigate around. And again, if this navigation pane is too long for you, you see you've got these little triangles here, I can just collapse things by clicking on these little triangles, and that will make my table of contents smaller. I can even right click and say collapse all or expand all, or which heading level do I want to show. So I can just say just show me level 2s. I can say just show me level 1s, and so on. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. So there's some really strong uses for styles. There are lots more, and I would advise you very strongly to go and watch the webinars on styles or to look into styles. Okay. You can also create your own, but again, you don't need to get that complicated. A lot of people don't use styles because they think they're complicated and difficult. And what I would say to that is there are different levels of using styles. So you can just use them, the ones that are there, the ones that are inbuilt, and that will cause you no problems at all. Or it goes to the more complex where you're creating your own from scratch, and that can be, that can be a little bit more complicated. But that is no excuse not to use them. So please do use your styles. Okay. All right. So that's the very first thing that I wanted to talk to you about. I also, the next thing, so number 1 is styles. Number 2 is section breaks. So whenever you're working with long documents, such as your thesis, you need to understand and be able to use section breaks. So section breaks is really all around the the page structuring of your document. So for example, let's say that you want a page within your document to appear landscape and all the rest are going to be portrait. The only way you can do that is to use section breaks. Let's say that you want to have a part of your document that has columns in it because you want to put in some different columns of text like in a newspaper or something like that. The only way you can do that is with section breaks. Let's say that your introductional parts of your thesis, you want to have different page numbering. So you want to use Roman numerals in one part and you want to use Arabic numbering in a different part. The only way you can do that is section breaks. Okay, so it's really important that you understand section breaks. All the stuff around breaks is in my page layout tab. Okay, so my page layout tab, I've got page setup. And here I've got margins and orientation and so on, and columns. And then I've got this little button here that says breaks. If I click on that drop down, you'll see there are page breaks and there are section breaks. Okay, so page breaks is to break an entire page or columns and so on, text wrapping. And then I've got my section breaks. So a page break will just put in a page break. It will not allow you, let me demonstrate what I'm talking about. So one of the things I need to do whenever I'm working with page breaks or section breaks is I press this little button here. This is my show or hide characters. Okay, so if I click on that, that's when I get all of these little things. So I get these little marks here, I get the little marks between words and so on. Now, I know lots of people don't like to work with these on because they make the text look messy. You cannot format your document without these being on. Okay, so I'm sorry if you don't like them, but I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to suck it up. Okay, because you cannot work with your document. If you're trying to troubleshoot any formatting, if you're trying to do things like section breaks and page breaks, you really have to have them on. Personally, I have them on all the time. Okay, so I never turn them off. It's because to me, that just looks naked and it freaks me out because I can't see what's going on. All right. So now I've turned those on, I've got a little bit more control, I can actually see what's happening. So let's say that I wanted to have a page break between my inner planets and outer planets. So I've got here, I get to the end of my Phobos thing here. So if I now hit enter, that just puts in a space. And I can use, because I'm a keyboard shortcut queen, I can use Control Enter and that will put in a page break for me. And now I can see there's a page break. Okay, so that's put in a page break there for me. I'll just undo that. The other way to do that again is to go to my page layout, I go to breaks and I hit page break and that puts in that page break for me. Okay. Now let's say I've done that because and this is why I like to have these things turned on because I can see now I've got a stray paragraph, so I can just get rid of that. That makes me happier. Now let's say that I decided that the outer planets needed to be in landscape rather than portrait. So I've put my page break in. If I go orientation and I change it to landscape, it's changed the whole document. Okay. I cannot use page breaks just for doing that. I have to use a section break instead. All right. So let's just do undo. And again, I'm going to, actually, I could undo that page break or I can just highlight it and hit delete and that will get rid of it. So instead now I'm going to come along and I'm going to go to my break stop drop down and I'm going to do a section break. Now, the kind of section break I need to do for this, okay, is I need to do a next page section break. Okay, I don't want a continuous, I could do odd or even pages, but the one I'm after is the next page one. So I'm going to click next page. Now, let's go up and have a look at what this now says. So see there, I've got a section break there. So it looks a bit different. Okay, if I just hit enter on there, you'll see I've got a better, let's just make that normal as well. There we go. So I've now got their section break next page. So I can see the kind of break that I've got. Then when I come down here and I click in my next section, so I'm now in the other section. Now when I go to orientation, I go landscape. There we go. It's just changed that one. Okay. All right. So that's one of the reasons for using section breaks. As I say, the other one is around your page numbering. So let's say that I wanted the page numbering at the beginning to be in Roman numerals, and beyond that, I want it to be in in Arabic numerals, I can come in and I can do that as well. So let's say that I'm going to come in here. I'm going to put in another section break. So I'm going to go page layout breaks, section break, next page. Okay, so then I've got this one up here. I can click in here and I'm going to go with my insert, and I'm going to, actually, if I just double click at the top, there we go. It opens up my header and footer tools. Okay, so I've got here go to footer. There we go. I've got my go to footer there. And let's say I want to put a page number in here. So at the bottom of the page, I'm going to go with my page number here, but I want this in Roman numerals. I can just highlight that. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say format page numbers, and I'm going to change that into II like that. By the way, there was a whole webinar that we did just on headers and footers, so I'm not going to spend too much time looking at this, but there is a whole one just on headers and footers. Okay. Now, importantly, best tip I can give you is, rather than going and scrolling down, is I'm now just going to hit this button that says next, and that's going to move me to the next section. Okay, so I can go into my next section and I can see here that that's got my numbering in. Okay, so I can right click on this one and I can say format page number. It has done the 1, 2, 3, but what I want to do is start at page 1. There we go. And I can now go next. And there you go, I've got 3 and I've got next. No, that's all of them. Okay, so that's how I can do different page numbering as well using section breaks. And as I say, the final one I can do, I'm going to close my header and footer there. I'm going to use my navigation pane just to get down to here. Let's say that with my outer planets, I wanted to put these into columns instead. I could come in here, I could go again, remember page layout breaks. I'm going to put in a continuous section break. So I've got my section break continuous there. And then I'm going to say I want this in 2 sets of columns, and that's just put that in 2 columns. Now it has done it for the rest. So if I wanted to do it after I finished with, let's say I wanted to finish that here, I can come in here and go section break, and I can go continuous section break, and here I can go back to my columns and say 1 column. So that is section breaks. Okay, I'll just pause for a moment and just see if there are any questions. So we've looked at number 1 is styles, and then the second thing you need to know about is section breaks. So I'm just going to pause and take a sip of water and see if there's any questions. All right, well, unless anyone's typing very frantically, let me move on to the number 3 thing you need to know about in Word before you start on your thesis, and that is images. So how do you handle images? I did notice overheard at the University of Adelaide the other day, there was somebody bemoaning the fact that if they moved their image by a tiny bit, it went flying around the page. This is a very difficult problem that is very, very easily fixed. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and, gosh, where am I going to put this now? Let's say that I have a picture of Mercury. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to put my picture of Mercury in here. So I'm going to go to insert. I'm going to go to picture. I'm going to find a picture and I'm going to insert it. Okay, there we go. So I now have my picture of a man on a computer looking for Mercury or something along those lines. Okay. All right, now when that popped in, you'll see I get this little thing here, and this is my layout options. Now, again, I'm going to show you the simple solution, and we will also talk about the more complex solutions and what on earth is actually going on. So with my layout options here, I'm going to choose in line with text. Always choose in line with text. If you want the simple life, choose in line with text. What that's doing is it's putting the picture on its own line. So it's almost now like a line, it's like a sentence or something. It's like a word that's sitting in your document. So you can move it around in the way you would move around a word. Okay, so you only get that option if you go in line with text. If you notice here, it's got the move with text and fixed position on page, and neither of those are ticked. Let's just have a look. If I change that to square, you'll see I've got now move with text, and you'll also notice I've now got an anchor. Again, this is why you want to have all of these little annoying things showing. You want to have them showing so you can see what's going on in your document. If I choose text wrapping, again, I've got move with text. So any of these other ones, oh, you see, and what happened there? It disappeared. Where did it go to? There you go. It's now behind the text. I could put it in front of the text. So all of those, I then get those anchor. If I go in line with text, I don't get the anchor, which means that if I want to, I can just move it around. Okay. Now, when I put it here, okay, let's just have a look at what's going on here. So I'm now going to go into See More. By the way, you can also get this from your menu up here. Okay, so I'm going to click on See More. All right, so you'll notice this position 1, it's all grayed out, and that's because I've chosen in line with text. If I go to the text wrapping and I choose something else, so I choose square, for example, you'll notice now I get all of these things. So this is what's going on. That little anchor that we saw, where's it gone? Oh, it'll be somewhere around, but that little anchor that we saw, this is what's happening. So we can choose, what's happening is Word is choosing this for you, okay, in the background. So it's choosing that it's got an absolute position of 0 on the horizontal to the right of the column. And the vertically, it's got an absolute position of 0 below the paragraph. So we can actually have things like we can change this to having an alignment. This can be relative to the margin, the page, the column, the character, the left margin, right margin, inside margin, outside margin. We can choose centered or right. We can say this is a book layout. This is inside and outside of the margin of the page. We can choose an absolute position. So we can type in a number there. It can also be a negative number. And this is to the right of. Again, I've got all of these different options. I've also got a relative position. Okay, so 1%, 0%, is this the page, the margin, left margin, right, and so on. I have got here, again, things like relative positions. I've got alignment. Now, you might think, why on earth would you have all of these options? Because Word is a huge, complex tool, and Microsoft are trying to please everybody. Okay, so you can actually use Word for doing some really nice sort of newsletter type layouts and do some sort of some more sort of graphic designy type things. One of the reasons I would use this is I actually put text box when we put on all our quick reference guides, and we put the contact number at the bottom. I put that in a text box, and that all sits as the position as always being at the bottom of the page. So which means that if you go onto a second page, it sits at the bottom of the second page, and so on, rather than having to enter, enter, enter. So there are reasons for this. But you are not doing any of those things. You are writing a thesis. And I promise you the easiest thing to do is to select in line with text. I wanted to show you those more complex options so you can understand that Word is not trying to drive you crazy. I know it is driving you crazy, but that's not what it's trying to do. Okay, so we've got this here. Now, one of the things that's happened now is that I've got my Mercury here and I've got my photo on the next page. I might want to keep it associated with that. So how would I do that? So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to, rather than hitting enter, I'm going to use shift enter. And that's what we call a non-breaking line. Okay, so you'll see here I've now got a different little symbol. Okay, so if I hit enter, I get a paragraph mark. If I hit shift enter, I get this little mark here. And I'm going to grab my picture and drag it to this line instead. So it was on this line. It was on its own little line, its own little paragraph mark, but I'm going to shift it onto the line above, if I can see it. Here it is. Okay, I'm going to delete that line out. So what's happened there is I have got it's sitting directly with that, so it will stay with at least the last piece of text. We'll leave a big gap there, but at least it stays with the last piece of text. Now, one of the issues that you might have with that is if I just come into this paragraph and make this paragraph justified. Oh, it's decided not to do it. Let me just put an enter in there. Let's just delete that out. And now if I do a shift enter, is it going to? No, it's not going to work for me. All right. One of the things that you might find by doing that is when we've actually justified this is that, so I have to stop talking because sometimes that happens, is that this then goes, this final line gets spread across across the whole page. That is caused by a secret little tick box. There are two secret little tick boxes that I want to show you. Okay, so let me show you these two little secret tick boxes. Okay, so if I go into File, Options, and I go to Advanced, all the way down the bottom is this. Oh, I've got it ticked already, that's why. Don't expand character spaces on a line that ends with shift return. It's a silly little tick box, but that tick box, that is what will mean whether or not you're expanding. So if they are expanding, which is what I'm trying to show you, but I thought I'd untick this, but apparently I hadn't, is you come and tick that. So let me demonstrate. If I say OK to that, that's what I was trying to demonstrate. So you'll get that, which is kind of annoying. So you just need to go into File, Options, Advanced, scroll to the bottom and tick that don't. And this other one here, Layout Options 4, you can apply that to all new documents if you want as well. Okay, so I'm going to say OK. All right, there is another secret tick box that I want to show you. When you're working in your thesis, towards the end, it will get very long. And if you have a lot of photos in there, and those photos are large or other images, so other diagrams or other types of images, you might find that you're struggling to scroll through and it takes a long time to do the refresh rate. So you might find that, that Word is starting to struggle a little bit, and just scrolling can be a bit of a nightmare. Of course, you can use this and then that should help you. But anyway, let me just show you this. In File, Options, Advanced, let me scroll down a little bit this time to Show Document Content. So I've scrolled down a little bit to Show Document Content, and I've got this here that says Show Picture Placeholders, and you see it's got an eye next to it, which means it can tell me what that means by that. So what it's going to do is it's just going to show a box in place of the graphic, and this will help with your scrolling. So let me just tick this and say OK. And where did I put that? It was in the Inner Planets, wasn't it? It was something to do with them. Was it the moon? Oh, I've completely forgotten where I put my picture. There it is. So you'll see there I've now got an image placeholder. Okay, so I've got my image placeholder, and it will just help with the scrolling. You're not going to notice much difference right now. I've only got the one image in this particular document, but that would make a difference to you when you've got lots of images in your document. And once I've finished and I'm happy, or I want to have a look at it, I can just go Options, Advanced, scroll down a little bit until we get to Show Document Content, and I untick that, and my picture will reappear. Okay. All right. Final thing about images is adding in your captions as well. So that is in my references, insert caption, and I've got figure 1 here, and that's because it's got the label figure. So I've got equation, figure, table. I go figure 1. Man with computer. There you go. So that's how I've captioned that, and that will stay with my, that caption will stay with my picture as well. Okay, and then also what I can do is at the top of my document, go back to the top of my document, is I can insert a table of figures. So here's my table of figures, show that, yeah, lovely, okay, and then I've got my table of figures as well. Okay. All right. So that is my third thing that you need to know about. I'll just pause again, see if there are any questions. All right. So number 4, number 1 was styles, number 2 was section breaks, number 3 was images, number 4 is numbering. Okay. So numbering in Word is pretty complicated. And again, I'm just going to show you some simple tricks that should make your life not as complicated. Now, again, just to sort of emphasize how complicated it is, this is a document that is produced by the Word MVPs, so the most valuable professionals from Microsoft. MVPs are people who volunteer their time, answer questions on forums, who do webinars, who write blogs, and who produce these kind of documents. They do not work for Microsoft, and they are some of Microsoft's strongest critics because they know Microsoft's products and they know people's pain points really well. So the Word MVPs produced this document just about word numbering. You can see it's 24 pages long. So you can see here we've got this sort of numbering in action, and we've got all of these different page numbering, different numbering, table of contents, indexes, chapter numbering. We've got all of these sorts of stuff. So it's a fairly long, complex document, and I believe that this only relates up to 2003. I don't think it's been updated since then. So it's fairly complicated, but we can make life a little bit simpler for you. So let's just go down to the end of my document. So first up, if I wanted to number my styles, by the way, I could just come in here. I want to go to home. Now, tip number 1, never, ever, ever, ever use this numbering button. Okay? Just never use it. If you're going to put your numbering in using the button, use the multi-level list. Just always use multi-level list. Don't use this one here, please. All right. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say I want all my headings to have these. And there you go. I've automatically just put numbering on all my headings. Ta-da! Easy, hey. Okay. So, as I say, don't use this number button here. Just type 1 dot space, and it automatically puts in a numbering list for you. If I want to go down my numbering levels, I just hit Tab. To go up the numbering levels, Shift Tab. Okay. All right. There you go. So I've now done, and now I can do some more text, and I can start again with my numbering. Okay. So I could do all of these. That's the easiest way. That is the easiest way to do your numbering. All right. There you go. You thought it was complicated. It's not that hard. And I can put some stuff in here and some stuff in here and so on. Now, let's say that this actually we want to continue my numbering. I just right click in here and you see I've got this continue numbering. There you go. If it's automatically continued numbering for you, I can right click and I say restart at 1. And that is the simplest way for you to deal with your numbering. And I think that's all I need to say about numbering. Okay. All right. I will pause again to see if there are any questions. So we've looked at number 1, styles, number 2, section breaks, number 3, images, number 4, numbering. Still no questions. I must be doing good explaining today. All right, so the final thing that you need to know about is EndNote. So EndNote is how you go about formatting and controlling your references. And if you would like to know about EndNote, then the library has wonderful information about EndNote. Okay, so within the university's library's webpage, you'll find this EndNote, and from here you'll find that we've got an introduction, tells you what EndNote is. It tells you all about updates and changes. Oh, there you go, good news for Mac EndNote users. There you go. Okay, we've got EndNote webinars, we've got EndNote training and support. So if you are having any technical problems, you get in touch with Service Desk, or you've got EndNote support. There are EndNote drop-in sessions every Monday during semesters. Okay, so during the semesters and the teaching weeks, you can nip into the Writing Centre to get EndNote help. There are face-to-face training for beginners and intermediate. As you can see, they are run quite regularly, and you can book online. So there is lots of amazing information here. So cite while you write. Okay, we've got things about different styles and so on. So please tap into the library resources. Those guys can really help you. So go along to those drop-in sessions, go along to some training, have a look at the webinars, and so on. That software is free for you, so you can also get it through the university, through the technology services. So please use EndNote rather than trying to manually do all of your referencing or using Word's own stuff. Okay. All right. So that was my thing number 5 that you need to know before you start writing your thesis. Okay. I do have a few bonus things to tell you about. So one of my bonus things as well is, it's not strictly speaking to do with Word, but it is about where are you going to store your thesis. Okay. My recommendation is you store your thesis on your U Drive. So the university provides you with some really stable and durable storage. So you have your university drive, your mapped drive, and you can store that there. That is your personal drive. It's your sort of admin space. Only you have access to it, so it's a great place to put things, and you can access it from anywhere. So if you store it in your U Drive, it means that you can use something like Adapt to access that document from anywhere. It is backed up. It is also stored in multiple places. So the university in technology services, we run multiple data storage areas. So we have multiple data warehouses in different physical locations. So if there's a fire in the building where we've got one of our data storage, don't worry, your data is also somewhere else. We do have a data storage system on North Terrace campus, but we also have one out with the campus altogether. So please keep it, do make sure that you are keeping your stuff there. Let me tell you a little story, true story, that was told to us by somebody from Tech Crew. So Tech Crew is the walk-up support for students. So you can just walk up to them. They're in Hub Central Level 3, and they will help you solve your problems. They had somebody who had their thesis. Now, this person had been reasonably sensible. They had stored their thesis on multiple different devices. So they had it on a bunch of USB sticks. So they thought about that, the fact that if they dropped their USB stick or they lost it or something, that they would have lost it altogether. Now, unfortunately, their computer got infected with a virus, with a CryptoLocker. So CryptoLocker is when people can hack into your stuff and they encrypt it, and then they try and charge you money to unencrypt it. Now, this person put their thesis in, they tried to open it and they couldn't because it had been encrypted. Now, in a panic, what they did was they then put in their next USB stick, but unfortunately, that also then became encrypted. And with further panic, they then continued to do that with their thesis on all of their USB sticks. So they managed to infect all of them with the CryptoLocker. So they were unable to unencrypt. Now, they did in the end pay the blackmailers, and unfortunately, they didn't unencrypt it. Okay. So that person essentially lost their thesis, despite the fact they were doing, if you like, the right thing, and they were actually had it stored on multiple places. Now, unfortunately, they had emailed a copy of that thesis to somebody, so they did have one, but they did lose a couple of weeks' worth of work. So that's not going to happen to you if you store it on your U Drive at the university. So I would suggest that's a very safe and durable place to store your thesis. So do think about that. Do think about your naming conventions as well. How are you going to go about doing your, keeping your own copies and what's the word that I'm looking for? Yes, versioning. Thank you, Ali. Is the version history. One of the things that I'll just quickly show you that can be useful for you within Word itself is if I go to my file, you can see I've got here my properties and I've got my comments. So every time you're versioning, you can actually type in some comments here. You can say added section on the moon or whatever it is. And that's another way, that's a great way of keeping track of your versioning as well, as you can add in these comments, can be as long as you want, but do come up with a convention around that. Again, the library have got some really great information around some really good ways to do your versioning and naming conventions for your documents. So don't assume that you're going to remember what you were thinking. Your study could last over 3 to 4 years. So you're probably not going to remember what your great system you came up with was on day one in 3.5 years' time. So use things like those comments fields. Do take some advice from Library on that one. Now, I've just mentioned Adapt as well, so do make sure that you're using Adapt. Adapt is any device, any place, any time. So there's information on that on the Technology Services website. And the final thing, the final bonus tip for you is, you may be thinking, yes, well, I'm not using Word, I'm using Google Docs. Google Docs does not have the power of Word. You might find that it's easier to use. That's because it doesn't actually have the kind of functionality that Word has. Word is expensive, except if you have a .edu account. So if you go to Technology Services webpage, so if you come along to Technology Services, you'll find here there's a thing called Software, or you can just search for Office. So if I just search for Office here, you'll see here it's got Microsoft Office for students or for staff, personally owned devices. So I can click on that, and if we go to Microsoft Office, or you can click under Software, I come in here, and you can get Office 365 for free. So Microsoft Office 365 is the access to the Microsoft Office products. So it is Excel, PowerPoint, and Word, and the latest versions of them, so 2016. And it is for free, and you can install that on up to 5 devices, PC and Mac. You can put it on your phone, you can put it on your home computer, you can put it on your work computer, you can put it on your iPad, do whatever you like. So, and that's all that information is here. Office 365 is great as well because it also gives you, you can also then edit through a browser, which means that you can share your documents and you can collaborate at the same time. We're doing a webinar on collaboration next time. But yeah, I would take advantage of that great offer. One of the things you'll also find with that is it's the latest version, so it's Office 2016, and the Office 365 of that gets updated all the time. So you'll find that there are tools and fixes that you get through the Office 365 subscription that you don't get if you've just bought a copy of Office, even if you bought the latest version. All right. Okay. So that was all the things that I wanted to talk about. That was the 5 things that you needed to know about Word before you start your thesis. Styles, section breaks, images, numbering, and EndNote. Don't forget that this has been recorded, so if you would like to see it again, we will put it up on our YouTube channel, hopefully before the day is out. I shall pause now and see if there are any questions. While you're typing your questions, I would just like to know how useful... sorry, I pressed the wrong button. I'd like to know how useful this is, so I'm just going to ask you... where are we? Okay, here you go. So I've just popped a poll up on the screen there. We do like to know if you find these webinars useful or not, so please let me know what you think of this. Let us know as well if there is anything in particular you would like to see. So either put that in the Q&A section right now, or you can do it.training@adelaide.edu.au. That's it.training@adelaide.edu.au to let us know what you would like to see in these webinars. 2 that we have got coming up is we have got using the track changes, so play nicely with others. We've got track changes in tools in Word, and we've also got setting up your data for success. So a little bit around structuring your Excel, your workbook, your worksheets, and your data as well. We'll probably squeeze in one more before we take the summer break as well. So let us know if there's anything in particular that you would like to see for that. Okay, I'll just give you another 10 seconds to answer that poll. Hey. All right. So I'm just going to give you an opportunity. If anyone's got any questions, or if you've got any questions, even if they're not related to what we've looked at today, feel free to pop them into the Q&A. Otherwise, we will finish up. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes for that. And I think we will stop recording.